Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking, and today I'm going to talk to you about 6 things that you are not putting into your dungeons, and you should.
Here's what I do. Here's what I Viking. Here's what I Viking. He thinks he's awesome.
And look who's here. It's Ivan. Just coming to say hi. All right, now go. Go. Get out of here. Go. All right. So this is cool, right? You know, so look, I've prepped. I have notes, and not only do I have notes in that, I have notes here as well. It's not like I wrote a ton of stuff. What I did was I took a lot of notes on this notepad in preparation for this video, and then last night I couldn't find that notepad, so I got another notepad and I tried to replicate these notes on here. And then while I was getting ready to do this video and get everything set up, I moved a box and I found this notepad. So, but I ended up writing some different stuff on these, so I'm going to kind of try to address everything. All right. So, what this is, in my opinion, 6 things that when you're creating a dungeon yourself, when you are creating this new place for your players to spelunk and slay creatures and what have you, that you may be leaving out. And if you are, I would suggest trying to put this stuff in. Now, this doesn't apply to a store-bought campaign or some sort of adventure that you've downloaded from DriveThruRPG or whatever. This is the stuff that you make yourself, and just like some of the habits you'll get into that you might not use. But anyway, there's going to be some stories, there's going to be some things, whatever, but let's just dive in and we'll go through here. All right, so number 1, empty rooms. Okay, yeah, so empty rooms aren't exactly the most exciting thing that you can run into. When you come across a door in a dungeon, and mind you, have more locked doors too. I mean, yes, it can be, sort of annoying to have somebody try to pick the lock or whatever, but I'll get to more why locked doors are important here in just a little bit. But even like a stuck door, dungeons are creepy places full of moisture and random goings on, and who knows who coming in and out of rooms, and who knows how long that door has been there, right? I mean, the hinges are rusty, the boards are warped, so have doors just be stuck, like just tough to open up and things like that. Just something to kind of give a little bit of verisimilitude. Now, the cool thing with the stuck door is, like, the first time they come up to the door, describe it being kind of warped, and you gotta, like, if you've ever dealt with a stuck door yourself, like, you have to, like, kind of lift on the handle and then, budge it and move it out, those sorts of things. Describe how, like, make somebody do, like, a strength check, a low strength check, to get that door open. But then, like, as they go through the dungeon, like, have them, like, realize, oh, you're kind of used to how those doors work. Just how I'm sure you've encountered a door in your house or your apartment or what have you, where you've had to do the same thing yourself, where, like, I have a door in my basement that, like, after you close it, you have to lift up on it for the latch to engage. It's just one of those things, houses settle and what have you. So play on that a little bit. But anyway, empty rooms. And an empty room doesn't mean that it's devoid of everything. It can have some refuse, it can have some broken furniture, you can even have, like, a recently used campfire or something like that. But what it is it teaches your players that not every room they go to and open up is going to hold a treasure chest, is going to hold monsters clinging to the ceiling ready to drop down on them. It just gives the dungeon a little bit of life. And it gives the players, like, even places where they can mark on their maps, and I'll talk about maps here in just a little bit. They can places that they can mark on their maps, where, like, oh, hey, this was a place that, like, there was only 2 entries into this place, and one of them we could barricade, so that would be a good place for us to rest and hide. And so they have those places that they can keep in mind. Now, mind you, an empty room doesn't have to stay empty. If you think it's a good idea to add something to that room later when they go in, that also helps breathe some life into your dungeon. All right, so there, empty rooms. All right, number 2, and this is one that everybody forgets, Wandering monsters. All right, so I will fully admit that wandering monsters for me are tough sometimes. Mostly because of the fact that I've been stuck in this 5e mentality of like creatures and monsters, everything having a billion hit points, right? And it is only recently that like we went back to our homebrew, this rule set that we created ourselves, and then I actually adjusted our homebrew for my campaign that I'm running now to lower the hit points for everything. I took away constitution bonuses for health. I made monsters, more classic first edition monsters, where an ogre only has like 12 hit points, things like that. So the players and the monsters are lower, and everybody's lower. And basically what that does is it makes combats more exciting because they really are deadly. And it also makes like the combats very, very quick. We recently ran a session of our game last weekend. We played for 4 hours. We got through 5 combats, 2 puzzles, and a trap room. And if you say that to like a person who plays 5e or something like that, and I'm not saying this is everyone, but if you say that to somebody that plays a later edition of a game, that's insane to them. How is that possible? Because the combats can be a slog and they take a long time. But we did it. Now, wandering monsters, all of that to get to wandering monsters. Wandering monsters are important because there's a lot of times when players play where they just assume, okay, we'll just head back over to that room over there, or we'll just go ahead and head to that room and we'll sleep. We'll have a short rest. We'll get up and we'll go, and we've replenished our spells or our healing or what have you, and we can move on. And it becomes almost like hitting the rest button in like Skyrim or things like that, where you just like, I'm going to sleep, and then I'm going to have full health after an hour, and I can continue on. And I think that works okay for a video game. Maybe not, but the dungeon is like a living thing, right? And depending upon the theme of your dungeon, whether it's like some goblin stronghold or some ancient tomb, there's intelligent things that live in there. And if you've been slaughtering the goblins room after room, eventually, Squark, the goblin, is going to wonder why he hasn't heard from his buddy Weeg in a while. And he's going to go check on where Weeg is, and he's going to go into the room, and he's going to see green goblin blood all over the walls. And they're going to say, holy S, there's something in here murdering us. We need to find that thing. And that's where wandering monsters come in. Allowing your players to just willy-nilly just move into a dungeon and just tear it apart with like no common sense as far as to like process the situation. Like even if it's just like cleaning up the blood on the floor and throwing the bodies into a fire, or if there happens to be a nice pit nearby, things like that. If players don't do that, they absolutely should have monsters like come looking for them. And the fact is, monsters just don't sit in a room all day waiting for somebody to show up to murder them. They have things they want to do. They have lives. They go, and I don't care if it's like a mindless, like blob or something like that. They get hungry. They're going to move around. They don't just wait and hope something comes in their room so they can drop on top of it and kill it. Do a wandering monster check. And if you don't like the idea of the randomness of the wandering monster check, then you as a DM just pick moments where you think having a wandering monster show up in like during the middle of a battle. Like say like you thought you have a battle that was going to be challenging for the players, but they're just like a few lucky rolls and they're just mopping the floor with that minotaur that you placed in that room that's guarding that treasure. Well, have the sounds of combat. Tell the hobgoblins, a little bit down the hallway, saying, hey, there's something going on. Have them come rushing in at a moment, to confound the players. and this goes a long way towards creating a narrative for your dungeon and also making it seem real. And it also will teach your players to, maybe, your magic, your wizard, dropping giant lightning bolts down a hallway with like, thunderous booms isn't like the smartest idea. And it's always a good idea to like just, put that stuff in the back of their minds. And like it is kind of the game beyond the game. But if they're expecting that, like, if they make a lot of noise and they're going to draw some attention to them, they might take it a little bit easy. And also for your stealthy characters, your players, having them being able to creep forward and, maybe slit some throats or shoot an arrow into the back of somebody, it makes them feel valuable. And it makes them feel like, they're contributing as well. It gives them a moment to shine. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for different areas, any game, role-playing game. You're looking for each person's chance to shine during a session. So there you go. That's a way for your stealthy characters to shine. All right. So this one's kind of weird. And actually, I mentioned. I mentioned maps. So this is another thing too. I don't like the idea of your players having a piece of graph paper to make their map. I am a big fan of just handing them a blank sheet of paper. Just, and then they can make their map. And I'm talking no lines whatsoever. I understand, you're gonna have people that are like, how big is the room? It's 30 feet by 20 feet. What does he have, a tape measure? And okay, let's say he does have a tape measure. Is he like, okay, go to that corner and hold that. Okay, we're gonna draw this over here. Okay, we got 30 feet 2 inches. All right, perfect. Okay, now go over to that corner. No, and even if they were gonna do that, then, that's a perfect chance for you to roll for Wandering Monsters. Describe the room saying it's like you're guessing maybe it's a 20 by 30 room, and lie. Say maybe 25 feet by 20 feet, just give them kind of an estimation. You see a door in the north wall, it's kind of in the center, you can't really tell, and you see a door in the southeastern corner, and it's heading east, and just give the players that, and then have them create a map. If they're going to take the trouble to make a map, make sure you roll for Wandering Monsters, because making a map takes time. And I realize that you may want to not go that extra step, because making a map is fun. And I have 2 players in my groups that just love making the map. They just love it. They just love the process of drawing it out and making it. And I get it. I understand. But I do think that if you want to keep the reality of the situation to a maximum, limiting map making will help a little bit. For example, another story for you, I apologize, but back in the day, one of the most common pieces of equipment people would buy was chalk. And they're like, well, why would you buy chalk? Because you weren't making maps. You would draw X's on certain corners and things like that, so you could remember which way you had come and gone. You gotta remember, dungeons are labyrinths. They're very rarely like the dungeon you're going to find in Skyrim, where you just heading in, going around in a circle, and then eventually it just spits you out towards the back end, right? No, I mean, if you get in trouble and you're running from a dragon or something like that, you're not going to have time to take out your map and say, okay, do we take right or left? You're going to look for that chalk mark you left on a door or an archway or things like that, so you know which way to go. So, limit the map use if you can. This is a good session 0 discussion to have. I should probably have a session 0 video at some point, but that's a good session 0 discussion to have with your players to make sure that they're okay with your take on map making. All right, so finally, number 3, a treasure that you can't get. All right, so a treasure that you can't get. So this, and actually, I mentioned video games. Video games are really good about this, actually. There's several times in video games where and this is newer ones and older ones, where there would be things that you could see, but you couldn't have. The old Ultima games would show you treasure chests, that your character could see, but you couldn't figure out exactly how to get there. And it wasn't until later, when you were more powerful, or you had more like you had gained levels so you could defeat the traps or things like that. That you could get to those treasure chests, and you had to remember where those were. And so, having the ability to just have a treasure, whether it is like you can see it through a barred gate that you can't raise, and you can see there's a treasure chest in there, maybe like a scattering of coins on the floor, your players are going to remember that, and they're going to think, I need to get back there. Now, and you could give them the solvency, you could give them the key in that particular dungeon if you wanted to. That's perfectly fine. But sometimes, like, having it being something that they can't get for a long time and then finally being able to come back is a wonderful culmination. I had a great moment when in a campaign, this is campaign for 3 or 4 years ago, where this like ruined city appeared out of nowhere. And all these adventurers were racing to it because they figured there was gold and treasure and whatever. And as the players were going through and like fighting monsters and things in this ruined city, they found this old like vault in this building. They assumed it was like a bank, and it was sealed up tight. The only way they got into the building to see it was the thief actually was able to crawl up and squirm his way through a window up on top, like the door to there was like one of the few buildings that was intact, and they was able to squirm in, and then he found in there this large vault, this vault door that had these weird runic symbols on it, no noticeable keyhole, and he had like he you know, and then they tried to like get in. He tried everything he could think of to open the vault door, and he just couldn't get it open. And so this vault was in my friend Paul's mind for like months. He's like, we need to go back and try to figure. People are like, what do you want to do now? They'd be discussing, wow, that dragon's bothering people over there, and oh, we've had reports of, you know, evil shark people in the water over there, and oh, there's pirates over here. Yeah, it's like, why don't we go back and get the vault? He'd bring it up every single time. And I hate to admit that, like, when they finally did go back to look at the vault, after they finally were like, okay, we're going to do this one last thing. We're going to go and take care of these evil bugbears. But then we'll go to the vault. They went back to the vault, and I said it was opened already. And it was like his arch nemesis had gotten in there first and left a mean note for him. But that made it fun, you know, because then they tracked that guy down, and Paul got the pleasure of beating that guy senseless and taking the treasure. But anyway, yeah, so it was a good way for that campaign to run. All right, so that is a treasure you can't get to. Like, show with the treasure, but don't let them get it. Let them work for it, and figure out a way for that to happen later. All right, so I believe this is number 4. This is a puzzle, and then parentheses, whose answer comes later. Puzzles and answers comes later can kind of like the treasure that I just mentioned before. You can do that or not. That's fine. But put a puzzle in your dungeon. It doesn't matter if it's something as basic as like the old chessboard puzzle where you got to walk exactly like a certain chess piece to get across, or it doesn't matter if it's like, you know, something where you like some sort of like cryptogram where you got to replace certain letters with other letters or things like that. A puzzle lets the players shine and not so much the characters. And what I mean is that sometimes the disconnect between players and characters is very, very Morpheus, I guess would be a good word for it. Players will like have like we don't have the abilities that our characters, at least I don't have the ability to cast spells. I don't have strength 1800. You know, I can't do a running long jump of 35 feet. I mean, there's a bunch of things, and that's right. I mean, so when we're playing D&D, we're playing things or characters that have powers beyond what we are, and that can be kind of like, oh, I'm just rolling this die. I mean, let's be fair, and this is pretty deep, and this is another video I should do at some point. Role playing is just like, I mean, it is in a way like the biggest roll and move game ever, where it's just like, you say I want to do this, you roll some dice, and you decide whether or not you're able to do it. That's it, right? You know, and I mean, there's more to it than that, but eventually what players want to feel like I'm saying, and the players themselves, not the characters. Players want to feel clever. They want to feel smart. They want to feel excited about things. Rolling poorly on attacks just, is just whatever. It's happenstance, right? But the players reacting to those rolls of like, making mistakes and role playing out their character through that possibility is what makes that fun. But when players are confronted with a problem, such as a puzzle, that means they themselves get to think about how to solve it and think about how to get past it. And when they do get past the puzzle, and these could be riddles and things like that, when they do get past that, allow them like that moment of like, yes, we figured out that it was the red lever to pull and not the green one, and things like that. And when they do that, then they're like, cool, we got past that, and that's something that they can be excited about, and not so much be excited about the fact that they rolled a 20 on a die. You can still be excited about rolling a 20 on a die, but solving something on your own with your own mind, definitely, obviously, gets people charged up. And so, and the whole, like, the answer later is that it can be something they find later in that dungeon. Don't let them wait forever. But I mean, if it's one of those things where it's like they walk into a room and there's two sconces that like look like they would hold like certain like large gems or whatever, have them find one gem very, very quickly afterwards, right? And then it's in the pocket of some like ogre magi or something like that. But the other one, they don't find that until much, much later. So like then later when they're like, oh, we found this large ruby that looks like it would fit exactly into that sconce, and then later on, like they're digging, they just slaughtered a bunch of like evil cultists or something like that, and hidden in the corner of the room or whatever underneath a trapdoor, they find this this other large ruby that wrapped up in muslin or something like that, and they're like, it's the second one, and then everybody's like, we gotta head back there. And whatever happens. It's something that, like, once again, gives your dungeon some life. It gives your dungeon some realistic like atmosphere, and your players are going to be digging it if you do that. All right, so this is what am I on? So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth one, and this is one that I think a lot of people forget, and it doesn't always work. But a monster that shouldn't be there. Dungeons have lots of different atmospheres and themes, whether they are ancient tombs full of undead, or that ancient the Duergar mine, or the Goblin Stronghold, or whatever. And there's like, you're gonna run into the same things and the same things and the same things and the same things over and over again. But eventually, the players are gonna be like, another room of 7 goblins, 6 more undead zombies, just like they're gonna be like, this isn't really interesting anymore, and they're just gonna start, like wading in with the swords and doing their thing. But have them, like, and this could be anything. It could be some otyugs that have crept up from the slime. It could be some hook horrors that came up from from the underdeep. It could be like an owlbear who is just in there eating the goblins, and has like and I think I did that once, where it's like the goblins had barricaded off of like a corner of their dungeon because there was an owlbear in there that had snuck in somehow, like burrowed in or whatever, and had eaten a bunch of goblins, and so they had barricaded these doors leading to that section of the dungeon. And of course, players come up to these doors that are barricaded. They're like, let's open this thing up. There must be something in there. And then, of course, the owlbear attacks them or whatever. But again, the whole reason for the monster that shouldn't be there is to just keep your players on your toes. Don't let them, just expect certain things constantly, and also get them to like you kind of like put a charge in them. Like you can see when you're sitting at the table, or like in your Roll20 video, you can see people kind of deflating a little bit as they're losing interest. Maybe they're looking at another tab, they're checking their email, things like that. And then you can see players around the table. They're just kind of like, okay, whatever. I guess we'll kill those things. But when all of a sudden there's something new, something exciting, like the owlbear just grabbed the halfling and ripped his head off. You're like, like, what? It's supposed to be goblins. What is this giant thing doing in here? You do that. Put something in there that shouldn't be there. And you don't have to come up with a big giant reason for it. You can. It could be like some visiting emissary, like that like from like some other location, that like came here to trade items with with some other evil group, trading with them. But and absolutely you can do something like that. But just it helps the players like get excited about the dungeon when things kind of start lagging a little bit. And then finally the last one is, and this isn't 100% necessary, but I like doing this, a reason to do more. So when you get done with the dungeon, there needs to be a reason for like another clue, another idea, another thing. Now, if you're running like a strict sandbox, maybe that was just, hey, let's go to this fort and clean it out and then come back. And then that's fine. But if you're running a campaign, there's usually something. You need to give them something to investigate, something to bring to the sage to have them look at. And it doesn't have to be like because there's this continuing story arc. It might just be they found this really weird looking sword that shocks everybody when they touch it. And so, they picked it up with their pot holders and got it in a backpack, and they want to bring it back to town and show it to somebody and say, what is this? Why is it doing this? We really want to use this sword. I think it's awesome. And so they can go to a sage and they can pay that person some money and they can research it for it, and they can let what it is and how it works. And then that builds into another adventure. It's like, oh, well, this is the sword of so-and-so, and you can only wield it if you also have the shield of so-and-so. But the shield of so-and-so has been lost for generations. I'm amazed you found this sword. And now they can research that, and they can look into finding the shield of so-and-so. And that could be a complete different adventure. And then if you don't want to do something like that, you absolutely could be like, like secret messages being dropped off for the evil cult, and then like that leads to an idea of like there's another evil cult that you need to go investigate and find that going out, and so you can go and dig deeper into the mystery. Like you track down a lost spell book of a certain mage, and like it's worth some money, so you want to travel to the wizard that has the tower off in the wilderness and bring it to him and see if he wants to purchase it. And maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, maybe he just wants to kill you and take it, so there's all kinds of things like that. But a reason to do more. It isn't absolutely 100% necessary, but it does help with like helping the players decide what they're going to do next. And players, it's my experience that if you let players do anything they want, sometimes that works out great. But sometimes when you let players do anything they want, they'll just do nothing, which is kind of boring. And sometimes you just gotta like say, the lizardmen attacked the town, better go save them. And you can go like that. All right, so those were my six things that I think if you're making your own dungeons, you probably haven't been using as often as you should. And it's good for me to kind of go over this as well, because when I make my dungeons, I need to remember these 6 things as well. So what are things that you think that you should put into the dungeons and whatever? I'd love to hear those. I'd love to have some conversation. If you do post a comment, I will read it. I guarantee it. Sometimes I don't always respond, but I will read your comment, and I will comment on, like, I comment or whatever. All that being said, if you could go ahead and, like either like this video, share this video, subscribe to this video, hit the bell icon, all those things, it helps me, helps the channel. And if you like what I do, I'd appreciate you doing all that. So until next time, I'm the Undead Viking. You take care of yourself, and until next time, when we talk. Hey, look! Did you notice? Somebody mentioned. I forgot to put the last one. I forgot the Tales from Behind the DM Screen. I got my Torchbearer. Torchbearer is great. Second edition comes soon. But anyway, I got my Torchbearer GM screen out, which is cool. But somebody mentioned I didn't have a GM screen. Or DM screen. If it's Tales from Behind the DM Screen, I should probably have a DM screen. Anyway, adios.